Today, we're stepping into one of the most important organizing ideas in anatomy and physiology, the tissue level of organization. Up to this point, we've talked about cells, but cells do not function in isolation. In the human body, similar cells group together and work as a team, and those team ups as what we call tissues. Even though the body contains over 200 different cell types, all of them are organized into just four major tissue categories. This level of organization is critical because tissues allow the body to perform complex coordinated functions like protection, movement, and communication, as well as transport. When tissue structure is altered, whether by injury or disease, function is actually affected. This is why understanding tissues is so fundamental, not just for anatomy, but for understanding health, illness, and how the body responds when something goes wrong. Tissues are groups of similar cells along with the extracellular material that surrounds them, working together to perform a specific function. Even though cells vary widely in shape and job, tissues bring order to that diversity by creating structure. This organization at the tissue level is essential for normal body function because it allows cells to specialize while still cooperating as part of a larger system. When tissue structure is disrupted, whether from trauma, infection, or disease, that disruption often becomes visible as a functional problem. This is where histology becomes important. Histology is the microscopic study of tissues, and it allows us to examine their appearance, organization, and function at the level that cannot be seen without the naked eye. By studying tissues under the microscope, we gain insight into how healthy tissues are built and how disease alters that structure in a meaningful way. All of these tissues in the human body fall under categories, and each category plays a very distinct role. Epithelial tissues cover body surfaces, lines internal spaces, and forms glands, making it essential for protection and secretion. Connective tissue serves to bind, support different parts of the body, including structures like bone, blood, and fat. Muscle tissue is specialized for contraction, allowing the body to move materials internally and produce movement externally. Nervous tissue is responsible for communicating using electrical and chemical signals to coordinate body functions. Together, these four tissues form the structural and functional foundation of every organ system. As tissues come together, they form organs, and this step up in organization is where structure really wants to start to match its function. An organ is made up of at least two different tissues types working together towards common purpose. For example, the stomach is not just muscles or epithelium, it includes epithelial tissues for secretion and absorption, connective tissue for support, muscle tissue for movement, and nervous tissue for control. This layered organization allows organs to carry out complex tasks efficiently. Thinking in terms of tissues helps explain why damage to one tissue can disrupt an entire organ. Organs do not fall in isolation, they fail because tissues that build them are no longer working together the way they should. All tissues in the adult body trace their origins back to early embryonic development. Shortly after fertilization, the embryo organizes into distinct layers of cells that will eventually give rise to all body tissues. These early layers establish the blueprint for the entire body plan. Even though adult tissue looks and functions very differently, they share this common development starting point. Understanding embryonic origins helps explain why certain tissues are linked in disease or injury and why some structures develop together. It also gives us insight into congenital disorders where disruption early in the development can have long lasting effects on multiple organ systems. The three primary germ layers are the ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm, and each contribute to specific tissue types. The ectoderm gives rise to the epidermis, nervous system, and portions of the sensory structures. The mesoderm forms muscle tissue, connective tissues like bone and blood, and many internal organs like the kidneys. And the endoderm becomes the epithelial lining of the digestive tract and respiratory tract and forms many glands. While epithelial tissue can arise from all three layers, muscle tissues come from the mesoderm and nervous tissue from the ectoderm. Tissue membranes are thin sheets of cells that either cover the surfaces or line internal spaces within the body. Their job is to protect, separate, and sometimes lubricate structures. Broadly, tissue membranes fall into two categories: epithelial membranes and connective tissue membranes. Epithelial membranes include a layer of epithelial tissue supported by connective tissue, while connective tissue membranes are made entirely of connective tissues. These membranes are especially important in reducing friction, protecting organs, and allowing smooth movement within the body cavities. Epithelial membranes combine epithelial tissue with an underlying layer of connective tissue, creating strong yet flexible coverings and linings. They are designed for protection, absorption, filtration, secretion, depending on their location. Because epithelial cells are tightly packed and form continuous sheets, they act as effective barriers between different environments. At the same time, their close association with connective tissue allows them to receive nutrients and support. These membranes are constantly being exposed to physical and chemical stress, which is why epithelial cells regenerate. Serous membranes are found lining sealed body cavities and do not open to the outside, such as the chest and abdominal cavities. They are made of epithelial cells called mesothelium connective tissues. These membranes cover internal organs and secrete a watery fluid known as a serous fluid, which reduces friction as organs move against each other. This of stratified squamous epithelium and connective tissues and is covered with dead keratinized cells. Connective tissue membranes differ from epithelial membranes in that they are made entirely of connective tissues. Their primary role is to provide support, protection, and lubrication. Examples include synovial membranes, which line joint cavities. These membranes produce synovial fluid, a thick, slippery substance that reduces friction between bones during movement. Without connective tissue membranes, joints motion would be painful and damaging over time. Epithelial tissues form a large sheet of cells that cover body surfaces like internal passageways and form glands. You'll find epithelial tissues in the skin, respiratory, and digestive tract, as well as the urinary and reproductive tracts. One specialized type of epithelium called endothelium lines blood vessels and the heart, creating a smooth surface that reduces resistance to blood flow. Because epithelial tissue often forms boundaries between different environments, it plays a key role in protection, absorption, secretion, and filtration. Epithelial tissue has several defining characteristics that set it apart from other tissues. The cells are tightly packed with very little extracellular material between them, forming continuous sheets. Epithelial tissue is highly cellular, avascular, meaning it lacks blood vessels, and relies on diffusion from underlying connective tissue. It has a higher rate of cell division, which allows it to repair itself quickly. The function of epithelial tissue depends largely on its location, but they follow a few common names. Epithelia protect underlying tissues from mechanical injury, dehydration, and pathogens. They absorb substances such as nutrients in the digestive tract and secrete products like hormones, enzymes, and mucus. Some epithelial tissues also filter materials as seen in the kidneys, while others reduce friction or move substances using cilia. Because epithelial tissues is so widespread and versatile, it plays a central role in maintaining internal balance and allowing the body to interact safely with its external environment. The epithelial tissue is structurally polarized, meaning its cells have distinct sides with different functions. The apical surface faces either the outside of the body or the lumen of the internal passageways, and this is where absorption, secretion, or interaction with the environment occurs. The basal surface anchors the cell to the basement membrane, which secretes the epithelium to the underlying connective tissue. Beneath this is the lamina propria, a connective tissue layer that provides structural support and roots for nutrients. Epithelial cells are tightly connected to one another through specialized structures called cell junctions. Tight junctions seal adjacent cells together, preventing substances from slipping between them and helping maintain separation between apical and basal surfaces. Anchoring junctions, including desmosomes and adherent junctions, provide mechanical strength by holding cells firmly together, especially in tissues exposed to stress. Gap junctions allow ions and small molecules to pass directly between neighboring cells, enabling communication and coordination. Epithelial tissues are classified based on two main features: cell shape and number of layers. Cell shapes include squamous, which are thin and flat, cuboidal, which are roughly as tall as they are wide, and columnar, which are tall and rectangular. In terms of layers, simple epithelia consists of a single layer of cells, while stratified epithelia have multiple layers. Pseudostratified epithelium appears layered, but it actually is a single layer, and transitional epithelium can change shape in response to stretching. Simple epithelia consist of a single layer of cells and are specialized for diffusion, absorption, and secretion. Simple squamous epithelium is thin and flat, making it ideal for rapid diffusion in places like the alveoli and capillaries. Simple cuboidal epithelium has cube-shaped cells and is commonly found in the kidney tubules and glandular ducts where secretion and absorption occurs. Simple columnar epithelium has tall cells with nuclei near the base and line much of the digestive tract where absorption and secretion are critical. Pseudostratified columnar epithelium appears to have multiple layers because the nuclei are located at different heights, but all cells touch the basement membrane. This tissue is commonly found lining the respiratory tract. Many cells are ciliated, helping move mucus upwards and out of the airway, while goblet cells secrete mucus to trap particles and pathogens. This arrangement allows the tissues to protect the respiratory system while still maintaining a thin enough surface for sufficient function. Goblet cells are an example of unicellular exocrine glands embedded within epithelial tissues. They are found scattered among the columnar epithelial cells, especially in the respiratory and digestive tract. Their main job is to produce and secrete mucin, which is a substance that combines with water to form mucus. This mucus plays a critical protective role by trapping dust, pathogens, and other particles while also lubricating surfaces to reduce friction. In the intestines, mucus protects the lining of the digestive enzymes and mechanical damage. In the airways, it helps keep surfaces moist and aids in clearing debris. Stratified epithelia consist of multiple layers of cells, with only the deepest layer attachment to the basement membrane. This layered structure makes them especially well suited for protection in areas exposed to friction and stress. The most common type is stratified squamous epithelium. When it is keratinized, as in the epidermis, it forms a tough, water resistant barrier. When it is non keratinized, as in the oral cavity or vagina, it remains moist while still providing protection. Other stratified types, such as stratified cuboidal and columnar epithelium, are rare and usually found in ducts. Transitional epithelium found in the urinary system is unique because it also can change shape as the organ stretches and relaxes. Glandular epithelium is made up of modified epithelial cells that specialize in secretion. These cells synthesize and release chemical substances needed throughout the body. Glands can be composed of single cells like goblet cells or larger multicellular structures. Regardless of size, all glands originate from epithelial tissues. Their secretion may act locally or travel to distant parts of the body. By producing substances such as enzymes, hormones, sweat, and mucus, glandular epithelium plays a key role in communicating regulation and homeostasis. Glands are broadly classified as endocrine or exocrine based on how they deliver those secretions. Glands are ductless and release hormones into the interstitial fluid, which then enters the bloodstream to reach target organs. Examples include the pituitary, adrenal, and gonads. Exocrine glands, in contrast, use ducts to deliver their secretions into epithelial surfaces or into body cavities. Sweat glands, salivary glands, and mammary glands are common examples. Exocrine glands can be unicellular or multicellular depending on their complexity. Unicellular exocrine glands, such as goblet cells, consist of single secretory cells that release its product directly into the surface. Multicellular exocrine glands are larger and more complex, often consisting of many secretory cells connected to ducts. These glands can produce large volumes of secretions and may be highly specialized in structure. Together, unicellular and multicellular glands demonstrate how epithelial tissues adapt to meet different secretory demands throughout the body. Exocrine glands release their products using three different mechanisms, and each one reflects how much of the cell is involved in the process. Merocrine secretions is the most common and involves releasing products through exocytosis without damaging the cell. This is how many sweat and salivary glands operate. Apocrine secretions involve the pinching off of the apical portions of the cell, releasing both the product and part of the cell membrane, which is typical of certain sweat glands in the axillary region. Holocrine secretions is the most dramatic, where the entire cell fills the product and then ruptures, releasing its contents. Sebaceous glands are classic examples of holocrine exocrine glands and are found throughout the skin, usually associated with hair follicles. These glands produce sebum, an oily substance that lubricates and protects both the skin and the hair. As sebaceous cells accumulate sebum, they eventually rupture and release their contents, destroying the cell in the process. The new cell then replaces the lost one, maintaining gland function. This process may sound inefficient, but it is highly effective for producing a thick protective secretion that helps preventing drying and microbial growth on the skin. Connective tissue is the most abundant and diverse tissue type in the body. Its primary role is to bind, support, protect, and integrate other tissues and organs. Unlike epithelial tissue, connective tissue often has cells that are widely spaced, embedded within an extracellular matrix. This matrix determines the tissue's physical properties and function. Connective tissues, including everything from loose tissues that cushion organs to rigid bone and fluid tissues like blood. The defining feature of connective tissue is a matrix which is made up of ground substances and protein fibers. The ground substance can range from fluid to semi-solid to solid depending on the tissue. Embedded within it are protein fibers, including collagen fibers that provide strength and flexibility, elastic fibers that allow stretch and recoil, and reticular fibers that form the supportive network. The specific combination of ground substance and fibers gives each connective tissue a unique property. Connective tissue serves several critical functions and supports overall body function. It binds structures together to provide a framework that supports organs and tissues. It protects delicate structures, stores energy in the form of fat, and transports substances throughout the tissues like blood. Connective tissue also plays a major role in immune defense and tissue repair. Because it is involved in so many different processes, damage to connective tissues can be widespread, influencing movement, circulation, and the body's ability to heal. Embryonic connective tissue is the earliest form of connective tissue and serves as the foundation for all other connective tissues that develop later. It is found primarily in the embryo and includes mesenchyme, which is made up of loosely arranged cells suspended in a fluid ground substance. These cells are highly adaptable and active and capable of dividing and differentiating into more specialized connective tissues. This tissue plays a critical role during development by allowing structures to form, migrate, and organize. Even though most embryonic connective tissue disappears before birth, its influence remains because it gives rise to the diverse connective tissues found throughout the body. Connective tissue is broadly classified into three major categories based on structure and function. Connective tissue proper includes loose and dense connective tissues that bind and support structures. Supportive connective tissue includes cartilage and bone, which provides a rigid framework and protection. Fluid connective tissue includes blood and lymph, which transport substances and participates in the immune defense. Connective tissue proper is characterized by a combination of fibers and ground substances within the matrix playing a dominant role in determining tissue properties. Compared to epithelial tissue, the cells are more widely spaced and embedded within the matrix. The relative amount of fibers and ground substance vary depending on whether the tissue is loose or dense. These tissues are typically well vascularized, allowing for nutrient delivery and repair, although there are some exceptions. Connective tissue proper contains a variety of cell types, each with very specific roles. Fixed cells such as fibroblasts, fibrocytes, and adipocytes are responsible for building and maintaining the matrix or storing energy. Mesenchymal stem cells contribute to tissue repair. Wandering cells are involved in immune defense and include macrophages that engulf debris and pathogens, mast cells that release inflammatory chemicals, and lymphocytes and plasma cells that produce the immune response. Loose connective tissues are characterized by relatively few fibers and abundant ground substance, giving them flexibility and cushioning ability. They function to absorb shock, bind tissues together, and allow diffusion of nutrients and waste. Areolar tissue acts as a universal packing material and underlies most epithelial tissues. Adipose tissue stores fat, provides insulation, and cushions organs, while reticular tissue forms supportive framework in soft organs like the spleen and liver. These tissues may appear loosely organized, but they are essential for maintaining structure and metabolic support throughout the body. Concentration of protein fibers and much less ground substance, which gives them great strength. The arrangement of these fibers determines how the tissues handle stress. In dense regular connective tissue, collagen fibers are run parallel to one another, allowing structures like tendons and ligaments to withstand strong pulling forces in one direction. Dense irregular connective tissue has collagen fibers arranged in many directions, making it well suited for areas like the dermis of the skin, where tension becomes from multiple angles. Elastic connective tissue contains a high proportion of elastic fibers, allowing it to stretch and recoil, which is especially important in structures such as the large arteries and the vocal cords. Cartilage is a supportive connective tissue that provides strength and flexibility. chondrocytes sit in small spaces known as lacuna within its firm gel-like matrix. One important feature of cartilage is this, that it is avascular, meaning it has no blood vessels, which explains why it heals very slowly after injury. There are three main types: hyaline cartilage, which is smooth and resilient, supports joints and respiratory structures. Fibrocartilage is tougher and designed to absorb shock, such as the intervertebral discs. Elastic cartilage is flexible and maintains shape in its structures like the external ear and epiglottis. Bone is a rigid connective tissue that provides structural support and protection for the body. Its matrix contains collagen fibers combined with calcium salts, giving bone strength and some flexibility. There's two main forms of the bone. Compact bone is dense and organized into concentric structures that provide strength and resilience to stress. Spongy or cancellous bone is lighter and more porous, containing spaces that often hold bone marrow. Bone cells like osteocytes resides in the lacuna and maintain its tissue. Unlike cartilage, bone is highly vascularized, which allows it to heal much more efficiently after an injury. Fluid connective tissues include blood and lymph, both of which play major roles in transport and defense. Blood consists of cells such as red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets suspended in a fluid matrix called plasma. Its functions include transporting gases, nutrients, and waste, defending against pathogens, and enabling clotting. Lymph is a clear fluid that contains white blood cells and is part of the immune system. It returns excess fluid to the bloodstream and transports fats from the digestive tract. Muscle tissue is specialized for contraction, allowing movement to occur within the body and the external environment. All muscle tissue shares key properties including excitability, which is the ability to respond to stimuli, contractility, the ability to shorten and produce force, extensibility, the ability to stretch, and elasticity, the ability to return and resist as length. Muscle contractions can be voluntary, such as in skeletal muscle movement, or involuntary, such as the heartbeat or movements of food through the digestive tract. Skeletal muscle is responsible for voluntary movement and is under conscious control. It is typically attached to bones or actions like walking, lifting, and maintaining posture. The muscle fibers or bones of the cardiac muscle is found only in the heart and is responsible for blood throughout the body. It contracts involuntarily and it follows a rhythmic pattern that does not require conscious control. The cells are short, branched, and striated with a single central nucleus. One unique feature of cardiac muscle is its autorhythmicity, meaning it can generate its own electrical signal to initiate the contraction. The cells are connected by intercalated discs, which contain both anchoring junctions and cap junctions. Smooth muscle operates without conscious control and is found in the walls of hollow organs such as the digestive tract, blood vessels, urinary bladder, and airways. The cells are spindle shaped within a single central nucleus and lack visible striations. Smooth muscle contractions are typically slower and more sustained than those of the skeletal muscles. This makes smooth muscle well suited for functions like moving food throughout the digestive system, regulating blood vessel diameter, and controlling the flow of air and urine. Nervous tissue is specialized for communication and control. It is excitable, meaning it can respond to stimuli, and it can transmit electrochemical signals rapidly over long distances. The tissue forms the structural basis of the nervous system, including the brain, spinal cord, and peripheral nerves. Nervous tissue allows the body to sense changes in the internal and external environment, process that information, and coordinate the response. Without this rapid communication system, the body would not be able to maintain homeostasis or respond effectively to environmental challenges. Neuroglia, also called glial cells, are the support cells of the nervous tissue and actually outnumber neurons by about 3 to 1. While they do not conduct electrical impulses, they play essential roles in maintaining nervous system function. Neuroglia provide structural support, regulate the chemical environment around neurons, assist in nutrient delivery, and help with the development and repair. By stabilizing synapses, they maintain proper conditions for signaling. Glial cells ensure that neurons can function efficiently and reliably. A neuron has very specific structures that allow it to communicate efficiently. The cell body or soma contains the nucleus and most of the cell's organelles and acts as the metabolic center. Extending from the cell body are dendrites, which are all branched projections that receive incoming signals from one neuron to the sensory receptors. The axon is a long extension that carries electrical impulses away from the cell body towards the other cells. Many axons are covered by myelin sheaths, which act as insulation and greatly increase the speed of signal transmission. At the end of the axon are axon terminals, which pass the signal to the next cell by releasing chemical messengers. Communication between neurons occurs at specialized junctions called synapses. When an action potential travels down the axon and reaches the axon terminal, it triggers the release of neurotransmitters. These chemicals cross a small gap known as the synaptic cleft and bind to receptors on the target cell. This binding initiates a response in the next cell, either exciting or inhibiting it. Synaptic transmission allows signals to move in a specific direction and provide a point where communication can be regulated, strengthened, or weakness. There are several types of glial cells, each with specialized functions and support neurons. Astrocytes help maintain the chemical environment and support synapse function. Microglia act as immune cells, protecting the nervous system by removing debris and pathogens. Oligodendrocytes in the central nervous system and Schwann cells in the peripheral nervous system form myelin sheaths around the axon. Ependymal cells line cavities in the brain and help produce cerebrospinal fluid, with satellite cells support neurons in the peripheral ganglia. Together, these cells ensure that the neuron remains protected, nourished, and able to communicate efficiently.